Greetings, church, especially deputies and bishops of the 81st General Convention. Today's webinar is part of a regular series. We have to help those throughout the church become aware of the work that's in progress, our strategic initiatives, and these conversations have helped us address topics that we believe are of interest to the church. Being insightful, informative is our goal. If you couldn't join us for the prior conversations, I invite you to look at our website, cpg.org, or our YouTube channel in the Leadership Conversations playlist. Today's conversation is more of an update. It's more than an update. It's a look back. Really, 15 years to be exact, when the General Convention established the Denominational Health Plan, and you'll hear us often say DHP just by normative acronym city that we have here, but Denominational Health Plan and the Lay Employee Pension System, and sometimes we'll call that LPS. This afternoon, we'll discuss our efforts to assist the church, creating greater parity, especially in benefits between the clergy and lay employees of the church. This conversation is a precursor to our online report to General Convention that will be distributed next week and posted to our website at cpg.org, R2GC. I told you we like acronyms. So cpg.org report to General Convention is R2GC. Before we proceed, though, I'd like to ask the Reverend Canon Arlette Benoit Joseph, Church Relations Officer and a proud colleague of mine, to offer our opening prayer. Arlette.
Thank you, Clayton. Good afternoon, all. Let us pray. Gracious and loving God, in whom we live, move, and have our being, we are grateful for the opportunity to gather in this way, to engage in this holy conversation. We humbly ask for your Holy Spirit to guide and govern our thoughts, words, and actions. As we reflect on the journey that has brought us to this moment, we acknowledge that there is still collective work to be done by all of us. Grant us wisdom, resilience to face the challenges that lie ahead. May our memories be filled with the valuable lessons of the past, and may we be courageous in the face of future challenges, always striving to bring glory to your name. In this virtual gathering, we are reminded of the power of connection and community. Although we may be physically separated, we are united in our commitment to one another. We ask for your blessings upon the ongoing work of the Church Pension Fund and that of the Episcopal Church, especially as the Church approaches the 81st General Convention. Grant us strength and grace as we navigate the path ahead. And we pray this prayer in the name of Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Arlette. And now to our task at hand. I've got several CPG senior leaders here that are joining me. I'll do some quick introductions. And first, we have Mary Kate Wold, our Chief Executive Officer and President. She has been with CPG since 2011. She oversees the entire organization, all the ways we support the Episcopal Church, and serves as the 25th member of the Board of Trustees of the Church Pension Fund. You may think that's a very large task, but before CPG, Mary Kate had held various other large leadership positions in the corporate, legal, government sectors, including at one of the world's largest pharmaceutical companies, leading a leading global law firm, and the United States Department of the Treasury. Next up, we have Frank Armstrong, our Chief Operating Officer. He has been with CPG since 2011. He oversees CPG's 3 lines of business supporting operations and compliance functions and CPG's robust client relationship management teams. Before CPG, he was a managing principal and practice leader for the Eastern region of Hewitt Associates Health Management Practice, where he also served as a lead consultant to CPG. And you will find that Frank will challenge your preconceived notions of actuaries when you hear him talk to you. Next, we have Patty Favreau, our Chief Communications Officer. She has been with CPG since 2008. She is responsible for corporate communications, CPG's education strategies, event management, client outreach and marketing, and the research team at CPG. Before joining us, she was president of a brand strategy, consulting, and product development firm and was chief marketing officer for New York Life's domestic life insurance and annuity business. I thought I knew how to say things well until I met Patty, and she is taking on the job, but being a personal coach and helping me understand my how I string things together in a non-Southern way sometimes. And finally, we have Lori Casallonis, our Senior Vice President of Benefits Relationship Management. She is our longest tenured panelist today. You note I say panelist and not a host of the webinar. Having been with CPG since 2005, she leads our Benefits Relationship Management team, which supports diocesan leadership, other Episcopal employers who offer CPG benefits, and she also oversees our chaplains to the retired program and supervises the wonderful faculty who travel around the church to deliver education about CPG's products, programs, and services. Before joining us, she was the director of finance for the Episcopal Diocese of Maine for 12 years. If you were to ask the Episcopal Diocese of Maine, they would use less kind language than joining us. They might say stolen, but she moved to CPG to serve the entire church, always with Maine as a special place in her heart. Now that you know everyone, Mary Kate, let me begin with you to help set our stage today. You began your tenure at CPG just a couple of years after the DHP and LPS were formed. And while our discussion today is focused on the 15 years of Parity in conjunction with the creation of those plans, Denominational Health Plan, DHP, Lay Employee Pension System, the LPS, CPG's roots around Parity are much older. Can you explain that?
Yeah, thank you, Clayton, for that. And I've done some research to answer this question. It appears that the church had been looking into lay pensions as far back as the 1930s. And obviously it took a long time. There were some major studies done around the 70s or so, then that the church had commissioned, and CPG helped with some of that research, but it wasn't until 1991 that a resolution was passed mandating pensions for lay employees and mandating that there be a 9% assessment to pay pensions for lay employees. But that was by resolution only. And after that time, and there was no kind of common provider of those pensions. It was just that there should be pensions for lay employees. But even after that, there was a large gap. At least 30% of our lay employees were not getting pensions. So finally, in 2009, another resolution was passed, and this time it was made canonical that there had to be pensions for lay employees. So way back in 1917, when CPG was founded, pursuant to the audacious vision of Bishop Lawrence that there should be mandatory pensions for clergy, finally, we made a major step in parity for the church in saying that there canonically had to be pensions provided for lay employees. So when I was being approached for this role and went through my own discernment about what this organization was really about and did a lot of research in that, it became clear to me that, and this was in 2011, it became clear to me that if I joined CPG, a major priority had to be getting both the Denominational Health Plan and the lay pension system off to a great footing. And when I did join CPG in 2011, that couldn't have been clearer that that was a major mandate. And in fact, I really look back on 2009 as kind of the big bang, because the amount of work that was then entailed for CPG in terms of systems and designing plans and communication and outreach and such was a phenomenal amount of work. And it was great to be in on some of the early stages of that. But I think that probably Lori was much more in the trenches than I with some of those. So I did travel along occasionally with some of the teams in those early meetings and such, and it was an inspiration and a joy to be part of it. Clayton, you're muted.
Yep. Thank you very much, Mary Kate. And thanks for setting that stage for us, both from a CPG perspective and your own entry into your role at CPG. And I want to pick up with Lori. So you started at CPG 4 years before this mandate was created by the General Convention, and after serving in the Diocese of Maine. So you've got a unique perspective of life in the church as a senior administrator, and then here at CPG with a very large job, all dealing with our clients. So refresh our memories of life way back when, and also how did Parity play into creating what we now know as DHP and LPS back in 2009?
Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks, Clayton, for the question. My back then is kind of interesting because I do have both perspectives of being at the diocese until 2005 and then being at CPG since 2005. As we know, our lay employees provide incredibly vital ministry alongside their clergy colleagues. And the 1991 resolution that Mary Kate mentioned, I would have conversations with treasurers and their comments would be, well, that resolution is merely a suggestion. There was concern about being able to afford it. And the resolution that was passed in 2009 really validated and supported the need to provide retirement readiness and the ability for our lay employees to save for their retirement. The DHP was similar. The DHP study, one of the things that was found in the DHP study was that over 300, a large number of our lay employees who were working full-time in the church had no health coverage. And that was something that just didn't feel right. So the DHP goal was to make sure that full-time lay employees and full-time clergy employees have robust health benefit coverage so that they can go about their ministry and do their ministry without that worry. It was an exciting time to be at Church Pension Group when the resolutions were passed. I was thrilled to be able to sit in both houses when both resolutions were passed. And what we knew then is, okay, now the work begins. My small team was responsible for implementation. And as Mary Kate said, we kicked into gear as soon as we came back after General Convention. We were road warriors. There was planes, trains, and automobiles. There were lots of conversations with diocesan leaders, benefit committees. We led education meetings. We had roundtable conversations. We attended conventions. And we also partnered with dioceses as they did the complex work to hammer out their parity policies. That was hard work and lots of decision making by our diocesan leaders and their insurance committees. At this point, we have 95% of eligible employees enrolled in the DHP. I think we're even closer to that, closer to 100% with our lay pension plan. And it was wonderful work, and I was honored to be part of it.
Thank you so much, Lori. And that background of that, being in the diocesan leadership and then moving to CPG leadership and seeing, we often talk about the small Episcopal Church, but when you're leading a team that's going everywhere in the church, planes, trains, and automobiles for sure. Frank, sticking with the theme of our lives before the Denominational Health Plan and lay employee pension service, as I mentioned, I mentioned you joined CPG in 2011, but before this, you were actually a consultant for the very company that helped CPG develop its response to and navigate the resolution to create the DHP itself. tell us how CPG viewed and how we approach this work.
Yeah, thanks, Clayton. You are correct. I'm coming on 35 years in I'll just say the employee benefits arena. So as you mentioned, starting out in insurance, and most of my pre-CPG life was as a consultant. And I did have that unique opportunity to really get involved with Church Pension Group and the Episcopal Church, really focused on healthcare more than 10 years before the Denominational Health Plan. So I think what's of even more important to note is that Church Pension Group has been in the healthcare business for decades before that, not on a mandatory basis, but way back, offering healthcare options to the Episcopal Church on a voluntary basis, and that sort of swayed with the ever-changing healthcare landscape as well as the needs of the Episcopal Church. But we've been in partnership with the church for decades on healthcare. And when it comes to the Denominational Health Plan, if you recall, the late 90s and early 2000s, without going into the gory details of the healthcare industry, we in the United States we're in the era of managed care playing itself out. So long and short, in the 90s, there was sort of the promise of, hey, pay less for a HMO, a health management, organization. You have fewer providers, better care, lower cost. Some of that played out for a little bit, but in the late 90s and 2000s, that was just starting to collapse. And the Episcopal Church, as other large organizations, were dealing with challenges, annual double-digit cost increases and that sort of thing. So the picture of healthcare with the Episcopal Church at that time, as Lori said, was a mixed bag of sorts. We had a lot of dioceses that had some of their population with us through the medical trust plans, where we hold the risk of that, but then they went and took advantage of some of these insured HMO plans, so sort of bifurcating the risk there. A handful or so dioceses went on their own. So what we wound up with was a picture of very different options available, inconsistent access to providers, and costs all over the place. So the Episcopal Church, just like other employers, took a step back and said, all right, what's going on in the healthcare industry? What can we do? And then asked CPG to perform the feasibility study, which we were very well suited to do. As Lori said, we've been connected with the church about healthcare. We know firsthand the challenges. We've stayed close to the evolving industry of healthcare and listening to church needs. So we pulled that all into a report, leveraging some of the data that we already had. But as, again, Lori and Mary Kate said, we went out and filled in the holes, whether it was data and or insights. We played that back to the church, as well as the conditions that lended themselves to be thinking about the advantages of a denominational health plan, leveraging economies of scale. The other large, corporate America was going through the same thing, unwinding these insured plans, bringing the risk pools back together, avoiding unnecessary costs like profit margin, broker commissions, premium taxes, and try to provide a consistent experience. So that's what the report put out there. 2009, General Convention passed the DHP. As we all know, we were ready to lead the implementation efforts and have been administering the plan ever since.
Thanks, Frank, on that. Here's how that came to, from an idea to inception. And then Mary Kate, as I said, you joined just after these programs were created. And so maybe help us understand as you entered the organization, what did you hear the intended goals of these two programs? So it's like, okay, here's our new challenge going forward in your tenure. What were those intended goals that you picked up and moved forward?
Sure. Well, I think one thing I can say is that the goals were very clear, and I think clarity is incredibly important when you're managing, managing benefits for so many lives as we are. And for the DHP in particular, it was to provide high quality healthcare, hopefully at an affordable level for people. So that was number one. Number two was to be able to contain the cost of healthcare. And we knew that we could not lower the cost of healthcare, that healthcare is expensive and, you know, we had to provide what the market provided and such, but we hope to be able to contain the increases and to mute the increases that people were seeing in the cost of healthcare. And then the third thing was to drive parity between lay and clergy. Now, I have to say, and I know there was a question in the chat about parity and how healthcare is provided. You know, the canon provides that it is intended that there be parity. We don't have any enforcement mechanism at the pension fund. If we see, you know, opportunities to shine a light on this and say that, you know, it's intended that benefits be equal, but we don't have insights down into parishes and dioceses and that know, you know, necessarily how they're looking at the benefits they provide to clergy and lay employees. And so there's only so much we can do other than very strong communication and marketing around the Parity initiative. But that parity was definitely very much of a pillar of the goals that undergirded the Denominational Health Plan. And I have to say, in terms of the, you know, we're pleased to see, obviously, there are many lay employees in these medical plans. So there is progress being made towards parity in that regard. And also in terms of the containment of cost, we've been successful there too. We know healthcare is expensive, but we have, and I have a couple of statistics, over the years, our annual increases have ranged from 4 to 6%. Versus a national average for large employers of 7 to 9%. And in 2024 alone, our average increase for the medical trust has been a 6% increase, and that's compared to a national trend that we estimate to be between 7 and 9%. So, you know, every dollar is important, and we've managed to constantly undercut the national averages for increases. So that's been satisfying for us, and we continue to try to do more there. From the lay pension system, we've just been delighted that we are seeing high compliance in terms of bringing lay employees into the LPS. We know that we're at least at a 95% participation level of lay employees in the pension plans. It's hard to prove 100%, but, you know, we're definitely very close, if not, you know, knocking up against that. So that is very satisfying to provide that participation. And I have a couple of statistics I can share with you. Since 2009, when the lay pension system came into being, there's been a 140% increase in lay employee retirement savings accounts. So we've gone from a little over 5,000 lay employees in our retirement savings accounts to almost 13,000 in 2024. So a dramatic increase, and we see that as a great evidence of success here. And the assets held in these accounts have grown by a whopping almost 420%. So that's both an increase. That's an increase due to contributions as well as market conditions, obviously, and the assets for those plans stand at more than $1 billion today. And know again that there was a question in the chats about this, about lay employees going into defined contribution plans versus defined benefit plans. And that was an option that was made available in the canonical change, that lay employees would have the option of lay pension system, defined contribution versus defined benefit. And that's generally a decision that comes down to the parish as to whether they want to provide, which of those models they want to provide to their lay participants. I have to say most of our retirees have been in a very small defined benefit plan. I think over 90% of our active lay population are now in defined contribution plans. But I'm really pleased to say that assets have grown dramatically. Number of participants have grown dramatically since 2009, and that makes us very, very happy.
Thank you, Mary Kate. And you can see that, you know, there were stated goals, and we have been since Mary Kate's tenure, we have been focused on moving those programs forward, understanding that there are places for improvement, but really there's extraordinary growth in each of the programs, and Patty, you've been here since both of those programs have been started and their initial goals have been kept in mind throughout their history. Your research team collects feedback all the time, and what are we hearing from lay employees about these programs, and putting those insights to work for those people who we serve?
Thank you, Clayton. Just for the record, I started CPG when I was 12. Yes, I joined CPG in the year 2008. The first day I joined, I just want to share, was the day the stock market crashed. And companies all around the country and the world were scrambling to figure out what they could cut. And I walked into a church pension fund board meeting, and the conversation was about how we could enhance benefits for lay employees. And then I went on the road with Lori and the then president and CEO of the church pension fund, Dennis Sullivan, and participated in all of these conversations across the church, members of executive council, deputies, bishops, lay employees, everyone talking about how can we enhance benefits for lay employees. And I have to tell you, my first 90 days, 6 months at CPG, I was just really inspired by the commitment to bring lay employees, recognize their ministry, and bring lay employees closer to more consistent benefits. And so, as Mary Kate shared with all of the data and the improvements that we've seen, we have working with people just really across the church. This is a webinar that we are hosting at CPG, but our work would not be possible without the diocesan administrators and parish leaders who accepted Lori and her team's constant invitation to be educated and to learn about how to implement the lay pension system and the Denominational Health Plan. So as we've shared, the goals have been met. I would say I'm actually dumbfounded by the growth in lay pension participation since 2009. Mary Kate has already shared the numbers with you, but also speaking with Fidelity, who's our third-party administrator of the accounts, we know that our lay employees are actually saving at very close to the ideal rate of saving. And that is good to see. In terms of what we're hearing from lay employees, we're constantly surveying. Lay employees now make up, they outnumber clergy in terms of our clients at the church pension group because of their participation in the Denominational Health Plan. And we regularly survey all clients to ask them how we're doing and how they feel about the benefits we're offering. And the first observation I'll share is that lay employees report the same level of satisfaction with us, which is high, as clergy. So that is evidence of progress, in my opinion. Also, we have surveyed lay employees about what they think about their pension benefits, and we heard from them that they find that they are competitive and generous. There is an awareness that lay pension benefits are not the same as clergy pension benefits, and that is a fact, that is true. But they believe when they look at their peers, when they look at colleagues working at other places, that the pension benefits that they have access to are strong. We also survey confidence regarding retirement readiness, and we do see gaps. We do see that there is still a sense of vulnerability and insecurity heading into retirement. That is not uncommon with like employees in like industries, but we take that to heart. And we are constantly developing new educational programs. We are constantly doing outreach to lay employees and clergy to remind them of the education that's available through us and through Fidelity to try to get people to engage with these benefits that are available to them. And then finally, I'll say we also bring people from the church into our offices. We have something called the Client Council, which is a cross-section of individuals, clergy, lay employees around the church. It's a diverse group, and they share quite candidly how they think we're doing. And sitting in the back of the room of this meeting, which Frank and Lori lead, I have heard just really wonderful anecdotes about conga lines when lay pensions were passed, and people who were able to provide health care for their children for the first time and really feel supported and cared for as a result of having access to the DHP, the Denominational Health Plan, and the lay pension system. So even though there is more work to be done, we are not claiming perfection at all. 15 years later, we have qualitative evidence and quantitative data that tells us that lay employees feel well served by us. And I continue to be inspired by the vigorous conversations within CPG and across the church about what can we do to recognize the powerful ministry of our lay employees and make sure they feel recognized and rewarded for their work.
Thank you, Patty. And so I want to draw attention to something that that is, I think, one of the pieces of magic sauce that makes CPG function so very well. You are seeing some of our executive leadership team and Lori as the senior manager of the church pension group here on this call. There are many others who support this work. And we bring people intentionally that choose to work at a place that has purpose, and they are folks that have deep knowledge of different disciplines in the business world. And Patty talks about when she came here, wow, that is a different tune that this company is singing than what I was used to. I have heard that again and again as we have brought senior leadership into CPG. So it is by choice that we have these great people working at CPG. You're only seeing a slice here, but trust me, the bench is very, very, very deep. And on that deep bench strength theme, I'm going to turn now to Lori. So Lori, I've got a two-part question for you. First, we've talked about the implementation, and Patty talked about hearing the conga line right when on the implementation. It's like, look, we're getting this, we're moving in the right direction. This is a sea change. Could you first give us some stories about what that was like on implementation? And then secondly, Patty talked about client counsel, and you hear truly, we get the unvarnished opinions which we integrate from that client counsel. Talk to us about what it looks like now on implementation, things that you're hearing as you go out across the church, so that feeling of implementation and what that was like, and then what are we hearing now that we know that we need to continue our work in?
Well, I guess in a word, what I would say is implementation was hard. But there was a lot of hard work that was done by the church, by leaders, by parish staff, by the people sitting in the pew to make sure that they raised enough money to have lay pensions and to bring parity to our lay employees. You know, before the resolutions, employers had inconsistent practices with regard to their lay employees. And so there was uncertainty. Is there still some uncertainty? I'm sure, but I think it's much less uncertain for our lay employees now. I've heard from longstanding lay employees that they're just incredibly grateful. There's a certain amount of frustration with that gratitude, though, as they think about the years that they might have, you know, they maybe worked there for 10 years before this all happened, and there's frustration, but they've made up space. As Patty mentioned, our lay employees are saving at 13%, most of them. That's the average that we hear from Fidelity when we get reporting. Fidelity does recommend 15%. So I would encourage anyone listening who is in parish leadership to think about whether or not they can make that number a little bit bigger. And the 9% is a floor. If you want to go higher, just call us and we're happy to help you make that change. Is it perfect? No, it's not perfect, especially around parity. We know that there are some grandfathered situations that happened, and those will come off over time. We work with our diocesan colleagues all the time to make sure that they understand what the rules are. But as Mary Kate said, it's not our responsibility. All it is our responsibility to inform. We work with diocesan leadership. We encourage bishops to do the best they can to get our lay employees up to true parity. The medical trust is is surrounding our clergy and lay employees with healthcare security, which I hear all the time about the value of those health benefits and what happens when people actually go into the hospital or have something tragic happen in their life. And the medical trust plans are extraordinary, and we're very, very proud to be able to offer that to the church. My sense is that in the way back, lay employees didn't necessarily feel that CPG had their back, but I believe that many of them know that they now have a real true partner in their health benefits and in their retirement readiness journey.
Thank you, Lori. And to that end, that having people that are designing the right plans for our both clergy and lay employees. One of the things we'll have at General Convention, we have our theme days during the lunch break, and we're going to have our benefits policy group. These are the people who spend all of their time designing the plans, listening to the feedback from Lori's client council across the church, and making sure that we provide the best plans that we can for the church. So, Frank,
I
speaking
have
of,
my hand raised. If I could interject,
oh, yep,
just
sorry, your hand blended into your
the background.
Sorry about that.
I just want to toot Lori and her team's horn a bit more. And we're talking historically about the lay pension system and the DHP, but I just want to assure everyone that Lori's team is still actively engaged in making sure that lay employees, administrators, and bishops understand the extent to which lay employees and clergy are participating in the programs that we offer. They visit with bishops regularly to make sure that everyone understands the preventative care options, all of the different wonderful options that have been made available through the health benefits that we offer. And we are constantly doing outreach with lay employees and clergy to make sure that they understand the pension benefits that are available to them. And where there is a lack of understanding in one diocese, Lori's team will put people together so that the church is learning from each other how to implement these programs still 15 years later. So I just wanted you to know that the implementation work of Lori and her team continues and will continue as long as it is needed. Thanks.
True.
Sorry for the interruption.
Thanks, Patty. And you know, she did say that I would sum it up and it was hard. I think it is hard because I think the work continues. And just a quick glimpse into the way Lori is passionate about her work. I remember the study where we said we're going to find out if if our lay employees are saving enough for retirement. And I remember hearing that and thinking, oh no. Because we're going to have a whole lot of work to do. And we found out that it's like, 1 to 2% off what is recommended by Fidelity. And we get all excited about that. And what you heard Lori Casalona say, you need to focus on getting that number to where it needs to be. And so that's the message and the care that Lori and her team take out to the church. So I think the work is still a lot of work. So agreed on that. Now, we've been talking about the lay employee pension system quite a bit. I want to move us to the Denominational Health Plan. And Frank, the 80th General Convention, and you will remember this fondly, I know, that there was a task force created to study the DHP. And named in that task force were our board chair, Catherine McCormick, and one of our client council members. And, they looked around and they said, who would add so much value that we just got to have him with us? And that was you, Frank. So insights from that work between the last General Convention and this General Convention. I know you've been attending the committee meetings and been a very active participant there with David and Susan, the co-chairs. So talk to us about what that looked like as work and what we're going to hear proposed for the 81st General Convention and the DHP.
Yeah, thanks, Clayton. Similar to financial security retirement, our work and the church's work is never done in our space. We're constantly staying connected with the changing landscapes of the industries that we operate businesses in. And healthcare is a key piece of that. Things are changing all the time. it's an emotional topic. So it naturally is a continued conversation within the church. And I don't remember a general convention that the Denominational Health Plan or healthcare in general wasn't a topic for at least discussion and often some resolutions around it. So we were really encouraged. I personally was ecstatic to see that the task force was created, because I had nothing to do, on my weekends and stuff like that. So it gave me something to think about going into 2023 and 24. But seriously, it's just way too complex and difficult of a topic to try to have any body, physical houses sort of trying to wrestle and make really tough decisions in a fixed period of time when the church has other big items and issues to be talking about. So we were really encouraged to see that it allowed a subset of the church to sort of tackle this a little bit further, have the necessary discussion, share information, a lot of education, listen, discern, and really try to get our arms around things. So, cut the chase a little bit. Well, what did the task force discover? Some of this probably no surprise. There was pretty quick recognition that there's no silver bullets. There's no silver bullets to solving the complexity and cost issues with healthcare in the US and globally. And there was an affirmation that the task force decided to bring in a third party actuarial firm, just to do a clean blank slate study of how is a DHP working. And that affirmed that it's still the best model for the church to use to deliver healthcare to the US domestic church, clergy and lay employees. And that it was important to keep access. It was critical value, as Lori said in the plans. When we're in front of different client settings, we ask the questions around trade-offs. Would you take lower plans, for lower cost? And the answer pretty resoundingly is we want the same plans for lower costs. So that wasn't one of the options, but that's what we have in front of us. And that is really the challenge that we're dealing with. And what the task force was wrestling with is how do we not water down the value of these plans, but address this affordability concern? And as a member of the task force, in those discussions, we were very committed to bringing some considerations to the 81st General Convention. And we recognized that there's not easy, the decisions left are not easy. They're going to involve some trade-offs of things, as I sort of mentioned before, or other stuff. But we felt strongly that we couldn't stop there. We had to raise, at least for consideration, certain things for General Convention to just sort of think about and sink their teeth into a little bit more. And so what was proposed was three main things. One was, this is one of the trade-offs. When we get to affordability, the richest of designs, is that something that is still affordable? And if so, are they priced appropriately? And, conversations around is to just the level of richness, does that just add unnecessary cost and that sort of stuff? So there's a resolution around affordability attached to how rich should the plan designs be. Our plan design choices are richer than other denominations of the market in general, but our clients want that, so it's just that balancing act. The second thing, and it is a lot of discussion at the task force, was so there's discussion around how can we bring the whole cost down, and then there was discussion around rethinking the best way to share those cost burdens. So whatever the total cost is, are there different ways to share those cost burdens? And there was one of the proposals is to think differently about how the church is sharing cost burdens, and potentially factoring in ability to pay into how we set rates, special attention to the supported diocese. So that's Navajo land, that's North Dakota, South Dakota, and Alaska. The acknowledgement is that this would create different winners and losers. So it's a zero-sum game. This in itself doesn't bring the cost down, but bringing to the church for consideration, is there a different way to share cost burdens versus general conventions for 6-9 years ago that decided let's bring them closer to center, which creates other pain points of discussion. So that's another sort of topic or factor. And the third was really encouraging Church Pension Group to sort of double, triple down on our efforts, everything that Patty, Lori, and Mary Kate were talking about, of how do we really educate and optimize, educate to employers and clergy and lay employees around what's available, the different levers that are currently available to control costs, to optimize the value of everything we bring together and that we put out there.
So, Frank, this huge landscape of really, like you said, it's a large problem. It's not a CPG problem or Episcopal Church problem. It's a national healthcare issue, and you always talk about. I always think about the balloon. So the balloon has a certain amount of air in it. When you squeeze one part of the balloon, the rest of the air's not vanishing in that part; it's just going somewhere else. So I see some challenges ahead for us with a kind of, especially around that ability to pay. What do you how do you think that we would go about meeting those challenges? Because it's very difficult to be in the driver's seat on where we're going to say you're going to squeeze the balloon. So do you see that as a challenge, or are there others?
Well, that's certainly a challenge, and there are others. I guess as you sort of teed it up, that there's challenges in the U.S. healthcare system that become our challenges and the church's challenges and every other large employer organization. It's a U.S. problem, it's a global problem, but particularly in the U.S., it's complexity and costly. Like, our system is very good in many ways, but it's extremely complex. It differs depending upon different states, different regions within states, and it's costly. It's just costly to get good health care. So that's one piece. The ability to pay, I'll come back to that. That's also a challenge to say, okay, we're supportive of the church, should have these conversations, but if that's put to us, there has to be a lot more discussion on what does that mean? What does ability to pay mean? We can't define that. We can't make that value judgment. But if the church wants to think differently about sharing the cost burdens, we're going to, we'll tackle that with the church to kind of figure out, what does this mean? Where do we go with it? That would take some time to figure out. So I'll kind of put that one over there. That doesn't solve the complexity or cost of the healthcare system. That's just how we're cost distributed. And again, that would be a zero-sum game. But so, we're in those conversations, and we'll continue to be in those. We constantly look to tackle what's in front of us, that complexity and just the cost. And there's only so much we can do there. As Mary Kate said, we pull as many levers as we can every year to keep our cost, a little bit lower than just even other large employers that are trying to do the same thing. And we have richer plans, and we have an older population. So our premiums that we charge back to the church to collect what we need, 94% of those dollars are to pay for what we expect clergy and lay employees to use in healthcare the next year. So it's basically just to pay what are necessary healthcare services. And we know there's new technologies, gene therapy, different drugs that are good. They're good for our participants, but they are extremely costly. And so we're figuring out how, we need to cover them, but all else equal, that's going to raise costs. Costs in healthcare are just going to get higher. That's just the way it is. We have to figure out, particularly for an older and aging population, how do we embrace those new technologies in a way that is affordable in total. Forget about how do we slice and dice that, and distribute those costs. So that's our challenge. How do we continue to meet those needs and control costs, keep broad access, comprehensive benefits, and do what we can to address that affordability issue when we know there's no silver bullet. So we'll keep pulling levers every year that we can, because this is what we do, and we'll be able to, I'm confident we'll be able to continue to mitigate some of this cost increase. But if we need to go further than that, we're going to have just broader discussions around some of those different trade-offs. But in the meantime, we're also, you'll hear us talk about launching a solution soon, a new solution, and it's really focused at helping to navigate those complexities. So think about it just one way, one door in to any question you would have about healthcare, if you're in one of our plans, it's to get the right care at the right time. And we've done a lot of analysis on this, and we expect it will result in better clinical and financial outcomes. So these are the things that we're doing as we listen to the church and do what we can to keep the value in our plans, but try to keep costs as controlled as we can as well.
Thank you, Frank. And I knew that that would be the type of answer that I got from you when I asked you that question. And I just wanted to demonstrate it's like, this is why you have a chief operating officer like Frank, because there's always a lever, there's always work, there's always, we don't put it in place and watch it go. And so thank you on behalf of the church, Frank, for your good work. Now, Mary Kate, CEO of all that we have talked about and much, much more. I want to give you an opportunity to kind of anything you would like to add. We've been those who've asked questions, hopefully what you've heard over time is we've been watching those and blending them into our answers as we've gone along. But Mary Kate, things that you might want to add about pension parity, DHP, in kind of a summary of this part of the webinar.
Well, first of all, I just want to say amen to what you said about Frank. So I applaud his efforts every day. And I think on the note of pension parity, as I said before, I just want to reinforce 2009 was a big bang. I mean, it was really a huge step for the church to decide to finally mandate through a canonical change pensions for lay employees. And at the time, the focus was on providing universal pensions for lay employees. And I think in order to do that, again, it comes to affordability. I think a decision, I believe, was made by General Convention that they had to stick with the 9% assessment that had been arrived at in the earlier 1991 resolution that was sort of a canonical change. So in terms of parity, I mean, I think we've come a long, long way. I mentioned the numbers in terms of the number of people covered by our plans, the amount of money in the plans and such, and that's been a huge, huge leap. But we can't at CPG achieve parity if you define it as kind of equal benefits, because 9% can't buy what 18% buys for clergy. We can't. We're not able to provide COLAs at this point for those who are participating in the traditional defined benefit plan and are retired. And there was a question in the chat about, is it likely that there'll be an increase from the 9% to the 18%? That's up to General Convention. So I haven't seen a resolution this time around that would actually request that. I think Lori made the point that the 9% is a minimum. So parishes can actually stretch and try to do more. And some of our parishes do that. We do have a handful of parishes, or even more than a handful, who actually dig deep and put more than 9% into the defined contribution plans. Those who are in the defined contribution plans for lay. So we've come a long way. Pension parity, again, if you define it as equal, it's not going to be equal because the funds that are committed are not equal. And somebody else in the chat raised the question of compensation. Of course, both with a traditional pension plan, a defined benefit plan, and defined contribution plans, the contributions key off compensation, which is standard. And again, that's a church decision as to how people in the church will be paid. So we see our job as shining a spotlight on some of these issues, bringing data to the church to debate. And but I think it's very exciting that the church made this decision 15 years ago, and we've been just so delighted to be part of bringing this, both the DHP and the lay pension system, into reality.
Thank you, Mary Kate. And before we get, I don't know if we're going to have much time for additional questions. Like I said, we've been weaving them in, and Mary Kate wove in 3 of them that we've gotten just then. I do want to ask one last question, Mary Kate, as the 25th member of the Church Pension Fund Board of Trustees. So, of course, CPG's work is aided by the dedicated work of our Board of Trustees. It includes clergy and lay members. this general convention, 12 members of the board will be elected. And we have 4 incumbents running. They just completed their first 6-year term. The Very Reverend Sam Candler, Yvonne O'Neill, the Right Reverend Austin Rios, and the Honorable Linda Watt. Talk to us about the significance of these elections, the role of a trustee, what backgrounds we look for in our trustees, and especially as a board member. Talk about what you see as the need of CPG that General Convention helps us meet.
Sure. Thanks, Clayton. Well, first of all, we always advocate strongly for the reelection of our incumbent trustees. The trustees oversee 3 very complex lines of businesses, our whole benefits business, which has multiple divisions within that, life insurance, disability, pensions, etc., medical, which we've talked about a lot. And then, of course, the property and casualty business and our publishing business. So there is a lot to learn. And after 6 years, trustees are incredibly valuable to us because they've come up that learning curve. So we really have found traditionally that we just get a lot from our trustees when they have the ability to go into that second 6-year term. So we really do hope that General Convention considers that and reelects our incumbent trustees. In terms of the needs of other trustees, the pendulum goes back and forth, it ebbs and flows, depending on who's elected each General Convention. And there was a time in recent history when we were really lacking clergy, especially parish priests in that. And General Convention responded, and we've been blessed with that representation on the board. The pendulum has kind of gone the other way now, and we find ourselves really needing lay people who are lawyers, who are pension experts, who are investment experts, who are CFOs or financial experts. So it all depends on where we are and, along this kind of time spectrum in terms of what we need. But those are some needs and gaps that we have at this point in time. And I know that deputies in General Convention take our elections very seriously. And for that, I'm eminently grateful. So thank you.
Thank you, Mary Kate. And we've got just a minute to go, and I want to thank all the panelists so much for your insights, for your expertise, for your care of what we do here at CPG. And before we close, I want to make sure that I don't think we've buried the lead. The importance of General Convention and CPG working together. That is who we are. That is our warp and weft. I haven't mentioned up until now that I have been at CPG over 25 years. I'm now one of those older people that Frank keeps talking about with the DHP. And I have been so impressed with how CPG sees the importance of General Convention, is always desirous of working together. I really believe that together we are much stronger. CPG is always standing by to help. Hopefully, some of you will be at General Convention and can come by our booth. You'll get an email from us after this webinar that talks about all of our booth activities. And I want to thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you to my colleagues, and church, be well.